is going on, White Sox family? I'm Todd Welter, and I feel like talking about White Sox baseball, even though we're in the middle of bear season. And why is that? Well, it's the end of October, it's darn cold, and I feel like talking about something that warms my heart, even though the White Sox could care less about me, because we have a very selfish owner in Jerry Reinsdorf who thinks, well, Chris Getz, who's totally unqualified for the position, is just going to turn this team around, even though he won't be given the financial resources necessary to do it. If you think the temperature is bad outside, look at what the White Sox have to do and what Getz has to do to get this team to be a contender per the Moneyball math. So, Josh Nelson of SoxMachine.com, and if you're not reading SoxMachine.com, you are totally missing out. Make sure it's a daily read. But he did the math, and basically the White Sox have to score 775 runs next year to be a contender. That means they got to improve by 134 runs. On the flip side, they can only allow up to 729 runs. And last year they gave up 841 runs. And that means a team that probably has to replace 2 to 3 starting pitchers, depending on what they do with Mike Clevenger and what they do with Michael Kopech. We still don't know who's going to be playing second base or right field. Has to be replaced to do this amount of, in terms of giving up that amount, that least amount of runs, and to score that many runs. And also, they need to add about players whose WAR add up to be 35 to 37 per Nelson. That takes a lot of money, and Jerry Reinsdorf, who is yet to authorize a contract over $80 million, is probably not going to do that. He's even already said we ain't going after Shohei Ohtani. So if they're not going to be chasing the best in free agency, don't even expect them to chase the okay in free agency. Instead, as they have been reported, they're going to be chasing former Royals. And why they are still fascinated, why Reinsdorf is fascinated with that organization, why he thinks Chris Getz is just this wonderkid who, remember, was benched and banished from the organization as a player. Why he has this fascination when they had the same type of run that the Sox had last decade. The Sox had that little flash in the pan in the 2000s. Royals had their flash in the pan in the 2010s, winning the World Series in 2015. Why he's obsessed with it, I don't know, because they only had 2 good years, and then they just fell apart. Why? Because they're a small market team who can't consistently draft and develop. Are you starting to see it? I mean, they don't even turn things around quickly. To win the 2015 World Series, it was a very slow build-up. They had to draft Mike Moustakas, Hosmer, Alex Gordon. They had to accumulate all this talent, and then they had to build a darn good bullpen. But for some reason, Jerry thinks, let's be the Royals. Let's not be the Rays. Let's not be even our other competent division rival, the Cleveland Guardians, who just all they do is develop pitching. Let's not be that organization. Let's be the Kansas City Royals, who only won 56 games last year. But the rumored acquisitions will be that they're going to try to trade for Salvador Perez. And they tried to trade for him at the deadline because Pedro Grifol, try saying that fast 3 times. Pedro Grifol, the no ability leader, thinks Salvador Perez being in the clubhouse will magically solve their clubhouse issues, which is a total cop-out. And that speaks to how this organization cannot develop talent. You can't find a guy in your system that comes up, learns the game, and then develops leadership skills during that. That's on you. Also, what's on you? You can't sign a player, any player. You had to bring Elvis Andrus in 2022 or 2021 at the end to provide some leadership. That is your actual organization at fault. The fact that you cannot develop guys with leadership skills, guys that will hold other guys accountable. You technically would have had it, but you brought in Tony La Russa, who sucked the fun out of the clubhouse, basically alienated Tim Anderson, who probably could have been a leader had he not been felt to be alienated by the organization and the fan base. But now we got to go bring in Salvador Perez. When you sign Yasmani Grandal thinking, hey, catchers, they're always leaders. That's another thing that shows your organization dysfunction. You sign Yasmani Grandal, who reportedly almost got in a fight with Tim Anderson because Yasmani wanted to duck out of the game before the All-Star break early because he wasn't in the lineup. That shows you that your manager has no solutions. If he has to go find somebody that he used to coach, that shows you that he doesn't know how to develop a clubhouse. And now he's going to bring in, you're going to have to give up assets to get a 34-year-old catcher who's going to be making $20 million next year and $22 the following year. And he has a $13.5 million club option after that with a $2 million buyout. So now you're going to have to give up prospects and money for a catcher who had an 86 WRC plus, a -3 FWAR. Now he did hit 23 home runs, which would put him third on the team from last year's team behind Jake Berger, who we'll get to in a second. So he at least still helping the power numbers, but he's also another redundant player. You'd be replacing Yasmani Grandal with Salvador Perez. Salvador Perez isn't, he's not the greatest defensive catcher right now. He's a -7.2 defensive FWAR. He's a -13.1 FWAR on offense. Slash line 255, 292, 422. He does have a career 459 slugging percentage, but he's not putting the ball in the air. He had a 167 ISO. And he would contribute to the free swinging problem that you have. 49.5% outside of the zone swinging percentage. That's not going to get you the runs you need to score to be a contender. It's not going to solve your problems. Okay, maybe it'll help with the accountability, but then again, he's coming into the organization. He can show off his ring, and I have seen it when players come in with rings. When I covered the Brewers, Mike Cameron immediately established credibility. Although I don't know if he won a ring, but I know he established credibility in 2008. So veterans can establish it. But on the same end, if you got a guy like, for example, if Tim Anderson's back, he's probably not going to be like, I'm not listening to you. I used to play against you. I used to battle against you. And now you're telling me what to do? And especially, you have Corey Lee and Carlos Perez, who are going to come at half the cost, actually 3/4 of the cost. And I would like a catcher who can catch the ball. Excuse me, I had to take a sip. Been on this root beer kick lately, and Virgil's. It's pretty good. Sorry that the image is flipped on there, but they they think that he's going to probably solve this leadership issue, and it's just not the right solution. You could go and sign Omar Navarez, Jan Gomes, or Victor Carantini for half the cost and probably get better leader and probably get the same amount of leadership. I mean, I'm not saying that Salvador Perez is washed. He clearly can still help provide power, and the White Sox need power. Don't get me wrong. But for the money that he's going to cost, and you're going to probably have to give up some prospects to get him, I don't want to see that move happening. Pass. Go sign a veteran or go with the two young prospects you have until one of your top catching prospects is ready, the guy that you got from the Angels. Sorry that the name escapes me right now. And the other thing is when you're talking about replacing, limiting the amount of runs that the other team is going to score, we still don't know who's going to be the second baseman. Second base has been forever an eternal hole in the White Sox lineup. They continue to go cheap at that route, and it's just so frustrating. And their new solution, I guarantee you, Chris Getz can't wait. Can't wait to the first day. He's going to jump the line. He's going to jump the market and give Whit Merrifield the same deal that probably Mike Clevenger got last year from Rick Hahn. They can't wait to sign him. And Whit Merrifield had a great career with Kansas City. Played with Toronto last season. 1.5 FWAR, only 11 home runs, 93 WRC plus. Slash line 272, 318, 382. He's not going to totally help you offensively, and he still doesn't have the wheels that he used to have. 26 stolen bases. Better plate discipline, though. Only 36.4% swinging percentage outside the zone. But it's just a short-term solution. You're going to be taking away at bats probably from Lennon and Sosa, who I don't think they're committed to. I mean, he would be better than Lenny and Sosa. Jose Rodriguez is hopefully getting close. He was the prospect they called up to have a cup of coffee, and he did absolutely nothing last year. But it's not going to solve the problem. It's just going to delay the inevitable. And it's just the symbolism of, again, you're bringing in another guy from an organization that you're competing against. And that has had a good run last decade, but has now been stuck in the same issue that you have been. And their issue is economically forced. You're in the third biggest market, but you act like you're in Kansas City. And to me, why not just then sign somebody cheaper like Colton Wong? He didn't have the greatest numbers at the plate, but he catches the ball. He is a leader. He had a tremendous impact on the Brewers clubhouse, some of their young infielders. He challenged Orlando Arcia before they traded him to be a better fielder. And look where Orlando Arcia is now. And it allows Sosa to have a mentor, and maybe he can finally realize his potential. And again, this isn't slamming the Kansas City Royals. It's just, if I'm trying to replicate a franchise, one, I'm not going to try to replicate a franchise in my division. And two, I'm not going to go with guys that are past their prime. I'm not going to try to sign guys in their late 30s. I mean, their mid 30s. Now, yes, you can still get some productive years, but this is what they think will solve their problems. And it's not. They need to be spending big and not spending big to acquire salaries in trades where you have to give up assets. And where one of your top catching prospects is only a few years away, you got to leave that open. You should be focusing on signing Aaron Nola and Blake Snell if that's how you want to turn things around quickly. But this just feels like you got new boss, same as the old boss. Spending money not wisely, making ill-advised trades, and then rushing players up who aren't ready, which that's the third move that I could see happening that I don't want to see. And that's Jake Eder. The Sun-Times had an article out where Getz was talking about their top prospect, the one that they acquired from in the Jake Burger trade. And Chris Getz thinks Eder is close to the major leagues. This guy has not pitched above Double A, and Getz thinks he's close, which is AKA, we're going to go on the cheap with our starting rotation. We think Nick Nastrini, their other top prospect, is getting close. We're going to go with these guys, because that's how we're going to turn things around. We're going to ignore that they still have flaws, that they should still have time to develop. This is a guy that had an 11.42 ERA in Birmingham. Started 5 games for you and could not find the strike zone. But just watch. That's who they're going to identify as one of their solutions to their starting rotation issues. They're going to give Michael Kopech and Garrett Crochet a shot, which I think is ill-advised. I think it's time that you move on from Michael Kopech. He's lost. It's not going to be fixed with you. He needs to go to another organization. Garrett Crochet needs to stay in the bullpen. So stick with finding at least 3 rotation pieces. You're going to have to keep Mike Clevenger, even though he's a terrible human being. But luckily, there are some good options out there on the free agent market that aren't going to cost you a ton of money, and you can go and sign them. Wade Miley, he's got a mutual option with the Brewers. I don't see them keeping him, and I don't want to talk a ton about the Brewers. I know I've mentioned them. I used to cover them. But he's a great veteran option. The only problem is he has injury issues. He's going to be on the IL. But you can, again, think big. Go get Blake Snell. Jordan Montgomery, he's another lefty that can eat up innings while you develop Jake Eder. But instead, he's probably going to be fast-tracked, just like Michael Kopech was. Although Michael Kopech really wasn't fast-tracked. He's like a 28-year-old still learning the game. But just like Garrett Crochet was. And then what happened? Tommy John. And then you're now going to, where he barely got any work this year, you're then going to throw him into the starting rotation. See, they just don't have good solutions. And that's why it's just, I don't know why I'm a fan of this team. I keep saying that. Why am I a fan of this team? But at the same time, hey, sat at the stadium when I was a kid, fell in love with them. I would just like them to see that, you know what, we need to do a full down, full out teardown. Do it right this time. Stack players with high ceilings. None of this high floor, low ceiling draft picks. Maybe, I don't know, use your ACE program to find some prospects. Alec Thomas doing a great job for Arizona at a fraction of the cost of Andrew Benintendi. But just do that. Have a big picture plan and not a plan that says, I used to work with these guys, I'm going to bring them in. Well past their prime. Well past their prime. Whit Merrifield would have been a great acquisition when you were in your contention window. He would have solved your second base problem. But you never ponied up to get him. But now you're going to pony up to get him in free agency, and you're going to pony up prospects to get Salvador Perez. It just doesn't make any sense. But then again, when have the White Sox made any sense whatsoever? So that's all I got for today. Talk to you later.